Kalispera, hello everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the Parliament of Bodies, as usual. I see some kind of faces that I see very often in the Parliament of Bodies, but I also see new faces. Today we start a new series of events that this time will bring together the experience and the knowledge of different societies with whom we've been working during the last months here in Athens. So as you know, until now we've been developing a different series of societies like the Apatrid Society or the Society for the End of Necropolitics or the Society of Friends of Ulysses Carrion, and each of them work with different languages and methodologies. Now we start a series of events that, in a way, they crisscross these methodologies, and they bring different societies in dialogue. This series of events will continue now in Athens, but also in Kassel, because as you know, the exhibition will be opening in Kassel June 10th. So basically, like for instance, the third event of Black Athena, the series that we will start today, will take place the 17th of June in Kassel. But really, like, continuing the discussion, and I hope that some of you at least can follow the series and the discussions. As you know, the series of events are called Black Athena Reloaded. Many of you probably know this title by Black Athena. This says something to you, but maybe not. As you know, Black Athena was the name of a book that was published in 1989 by Martin Bernal. And this book, when it was published, created a huge controversy within different disciplines in European and American universities. The thesis of Martin Bernal was that a kind of a history of Greek had been invented during the 18th century, at the time in which also the Orientalist and the Hellenic European myth was invented, together within colonial consciousness. And that Hellenic and Orientalist reading of the history of Greece had to do precisely with the linking Greece from its African origins, from its relationship with Africa and with Asian history. So what Bernal will do is basically tracing back both archaeological evidence, but also linguistic evidence to really relate again Greek history and language especially with Egyptian and Phoenician origins. Well, this, as I said, I will not enter today in a discussion of Bernal's book. This created a huge controversy, and afterwards, many both historians, people working in linguistics and archaeology said Bernal is not right. But somehow the important thing that had happened is that Bernal had produced a sort of a paradigm shift. He had started looking at Greek history from a different point of view, and producing something that has been called by decolonial thinkers precisely like delinking the Greek history from the colonial imaginary, right? And linking it back with African history and with Asian history. These debates have continued within the both post-colonial, anti-colonial, decolonial debates, but I think there are debates that have not been heard so much in Athens. This is at least my impression. When we started working on this with different people from the societies, people were telling me like, oh, Black Athena is a group of music, and I was like, okay, maybe yes, there's a group of music, guys, but there is also a big debate that we have to maybe come back to. And So at that time, we started working really on this idea of looking back to the, not just to the history of Greece, but also to European history as well, from the point of view of its African roots and its relationship with non-European histories. So the first event, it will happen today, and we have here, and it's my great honor to introduce to you our two speakers of today. There are Christian Nyampeta and Isaie Tseimame. I hope to pronounce it not too badly. I have to say that very important for all of you, Isaie will be speaking in French, so we will have translation into English. So if you cannot follow the French, please, you can go now and get the headphones, because he will be our first speaker. So I kind of ask you to go and use the translation. Christian will speak in English, but we will be able to have like a conversation with in French, Greek, or English with in the Q&A with you. So basically, when starting working on this Black Athena series, I got in touch with both of them, and I realized that they were doing absolutely groundbreaking research and work in rereading Greek philosophy from the point of view of its connections with African philosophies and traditions. I think that in the case of Isaie, it's the first time that he's in Europe, that he's been invited to Europe, and I think this is a great honor, and both of them were extremely happy to be in Athens. I think they're very touched by the fact that they will be speaking about somehow about Greek philosophy for the first time being in Athens. And so it's a great pleasure for me to introduce both of them to you. As you know, one of the protocols in the Parliament of Bodies is that we do not make academic introductions of the speakers, but they really introduce themselves the way they like. So now I give you the floor with great pleasure, Isaie, and you can introduce yourself to the Parliament of Bodies. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I apologize. My English is very, very bad. I prefer to speak in French. Je m'appelle Nzeimane Isaie, comme il vient de le dire. Je suis rwandais. C'est un pays de l'Afrique centrale. J'ai fait mes études de philosophie au Cameroun, à Yaoundé. Je les ai terminées à Abidjan, c'est en Côte d'Ivoire. Pour le moment, je suis professeur de philosophie à l'Université du Rwanda. J'ai fondé aussi une université privée. Le titre c'est Nile Source Polytechnic of Applied Arts, où nous avons des départements d'architecture, de cinématographie. Bien, c'est une très belle occasion de faire un passage en Europe. Je n'avais jamais été en Europe et heureusement pour la première fois, j'ai l'occasion de faire ma première visite en Europe, à Athènes. Je vis aussi de Venise, c'était une belle occasion. J'ai trouvé vraiment à Venise les traces de l'homme et vraiment de l'humanité. Comme il vient de le dire, parler de la philosophie grecque, ici, c'est un honneur, mais aussi un risque. C'est vraiment une aventure. J'espère que je vais m'en sortir gaillardement. C'est pas facile. Bien, le titre de ma présentation, c'est l'unicité de l'humanité affirmée en philosophie. En fait, mon idée essentielle, c'est de permettre aux jeunes de continuer l'histoire, mais aussi en pouvoir créer leur propre histoire, parce que comme nous allons voir, l'histoire de l'humanité n'est pas toujours écrite sur des tableaux blancs, parfois c'est sur des tableaux noirs. Et la jeunesse est appelée à tenter de créer aussi une continuité, mais aussi une rupture. le plan que j'ai proposé sur celui-ci, la philosophie et la philosophie grecque, l'archéologie, ce qu'on peut décoloniser aussi l'archéologie. Je me propose aussi un dialogue entre les cultures, en fait de compte, quelques projets éducatifs. Le contexte est vraiment celui de soutenir les efforts des personnes qui cherchent toujours à construire l'humanité commune. C'est ce qu'en Kinyarwanda nous appelons ubuvandimwe. Nous avons une conception sur laquelle tous les hommes proviennent des mêmes entrailles. Et le questionnement philosophique que je propose est bien celui-ci. Quelle est l'origine de l'homme? Quelle est l'origine de la pensée? Quelle est l'origine de la philosophie? Quelle est l'origine des sciences? Est-ce que ce sont de bonnes questions? Est-ce que ces questions ont vraiment des réponses? Quel est le rapport entre l'intellectuel curieux, désintéressé, et le porticier toujours intéressé? Parce que toutes ces questions sont gérées intellectuellement, mais aussi politiquement. Comment former une nouvelle génération à rompre avec les mauvaises questions? Parce qu'il y en a trop de mauvaises questions dans l'humanité. C'est vraiment une difficile thèse. Lorsqu'on risque la question de l'origine de l'homme, de l'humanité, des sciences, on risque des paradoxes. Et l'archéologie propose des origines, insiste aussi sur les mouvements migratoires des personnes, mais chaque fois en s'appuyant sur des indices. De façon méthodologique, les indices ne sont pas des évidences sur lesquelles on peut prendre des décisions. Mais sur le plan politique, nous avons déjà constaté que ces simples indices archéologiques conduisent à des politiques, des relations continentales assez défectueuses, ce qui m'a conduit à proposer quelques conséquences de questionnement d'ordre évolutionniste. En fait, la thèse de l'archéologie aurait dû construire une fraternité universelle, aurait dû montrer que tous les hommes proviennent du même endroit. Mais partout où ces thèses sont défendues, c'est surtout pour l'ignorance volontaire, j'insiste sur volontaire, de l'autre, l'ignorance de la beauté et de la bonté de l'humanité. Et nous allons constater que dans ce monde, selon ces thèses justement, l'homme vient de quelque part, et partout où il est, ce n'est pas chez lui. Les liens avec la philosophie, par rapport justement à la question de l'origine de la pensée, de la philosophie de l'homme, nous avons à peu près 4 traditions. La tradition précolombienne, la tradition orientale, la tradition afro-égyptienne et la tradition grecque, la philosophie grecque. Mais encore, à ce niveau, on discute toujours dans les universités l'ancienneté ou la primauté de toutes ces traditions. En fait, ce qui est au moins certain, c'est que l'homme est un être métaphysicien. Nous sommes des êtres qui se posent des questions. Ce sont des questions communes. Quelle est l'origine de l'homme? Quel est le sens de la vie? Quel est le bonheur pour l'homme? Autant de questions qui sont universelles. Et ces questions devraient nous permettre de fonder l'humanité commune. Il y a absolument un début commun de la philosophie. Tous les peuples dans le monde entier nomment les choses. En fait, nommer les choses, c'est leur donner aussi une essence. C'est leur donner une existence mentale. En fait, tous les peuples savent qu'il y a des invariants qui peuvent être mathématiques, physiques, économiques, anthropologiques, métaphysiques. Et tous les peuples savent relier les phénomènes entre eux. Et c'est déjà le début du savoir, c'est déjà le début de la science. Néanmoins, on peut remarquer des débuts de différenciation. Tous les peuples se posent les mêmes questions. La différence se trouve du point de vue de la méthodologie et des solutions qu'ils vont adopter. Nous constatons dans le monde que certains peuples optent pour la voie des mythes, des légendes, mais ces mythes et ces légendes ne sont pas si fausses, à moins qu'on les interprète selon le positivisme courant. Ces mythes structurent l'éthique, ces mythes structurent l'épistémologie, ces mythes structurent aussi le savoir. D'autres peuples ont opté pour la voie empirique d'observation des phénomènes. Et là, je me permettrai de citer Thalès, qui a voulu observer vraiment les phénomènes tels que ces phénomènes c'est. La philosophie grecque a eu l'avantage de rompre complètement avec, de rompre partiellement avec les mythes pour regarder le monde tel que ce monde se présente. Bien, les Grecs et la philosophie, avant j'avais intitulé, j'avais trouvé le titre, est-ce que l'origine de la philosophie chez les Grecs est vraiment contestable. De façon modeste, on peut dire que les Grecs n'ont pas inventé la philosophie. La philosophie était déjà là, dans l'être, dans l'action, dans le logos. Là, je me réfère à Héraclite. L'avantage, la force, l'ingéniosité, le courage des Grecs, c'est d'avoir isolé les essences, isolé la pensée. Les Grecs ont fait du logos un discours, ils ont créé des logiques. Les Grecs ont créé des systèmes de pensée capables d'autocontrôle. Et ce qui est assez pertinent, les Grecs ont créé des penseurs solitaires, se lever au matin, prendre son petit sac, aller sur les collines ou sur la plage pour penser. Autrement dit, les Grecs ont fait de la pensée un job, un métier. Il y a le métier d'un penseur. Ils ont fait aussi des écoles. Ils ont fait des corpus. Il existe beaucoup de manuscrits des philosophes grecs anciens. Ils ont fait des livres, des corpus. Les Grecs ont fait de l'éthique un bien intérieur, mais aussi une solitude. Je me disais de façon assez romantique qu'étudier la philosophie antique, lire les premiers philosophes grecs, c'est être doublement né. Dans ce sens, je suis convaincu que nous sommes tous nés ici. Au moins ceux qui ont fait la philosophie et qui ont fait les autres sciences. Mais l'inverse est aussi possible. Dans la grande partie des peuples, ils forgeaient, mais ils ignorent. Peut-être ils n'ont pas fait de la théorie de l'énergie leur job. En fait, à partir de ceci, je voudrais souligner que la philosophie était déjà là, dans l'action. Toutes les actions comportent une pensée. La philosophie est déjà là. Mais le courage des Grecs, comme je le disais, a consisté à séparer l'action et la pensée. Les peuples font des œuvres ingénieuses. Dans ces œuvres, on peut y trouver des traces de la philosophie. C'est assez crucial parce que le savoir théorique permet de s'adapter dans les environnements. Et c'est assez important parce que la science théorique permet des adaptations, permet des adaptations continuelles dans l'environnement. En fait, ne pas faire de la philosophie, c'est supposer que le monde est stable. Le monde est instable et la pensée, c'est ce qui permet de fonctionner avec le monde dans son dynamisme. Là, je me réfère à Héraclite lorsqu'il disait que tout est très cool, tout est changeant, tout est mouvement. Provisoirement, écrire comme les premiers l'ont fait, c'est vraiment réfléchir. Je suis tenté de dire que les peuples qui écrivent réfléchissent. Écrire, c'est réfléchir, c'est corriger, c'est abandonner, c'est brûler. Hier, je disais à un étudiant que je suis en train de chercher à brûler ma thèse parce que j'y trouve des fautes. Écrire, c'est abandonner aussi. Écrire, c'est discipliner la pensée. Et j'ai l'impression que l'écriture sera toujours un bien de l'humanité. Il y a 3 miracles qu'on devrait souligner. Je m'achemine vers l'archéologie. Il y a 3 miracles dans l'humanité. Il y a le miracle des hommes toujours partout, les mêmes toujours partout. Il y a le miracle des Grecs qui ont eu des intuitions fécondes. Et enfin, il y a le miracle de l'Occident explorateur. L'Occident explorateur des terres, des cultures, des océans, des fonds des océans, de l'espace, même du ciel. Je les appelle des miracles parce que tous les réseaux qui ont été avancés, des réseaux climatiques, des réseaux raciaux, des réseaux géographiques, ne sont pas assez pertinentes pour expliquer ces situations historiques. L'archéologie s'en est servie et l'archéologie, les sciences humaines et les sciences sociales sont servis de ces origines de l'humanité pour produire des méfaits dans l'humanité. Par quel mécanisme? Les sciences sociales, les sciences archéologiques, les sciences historiques ont supprimé le cercle traditionnel de pensée, de produire, d'éducation, sans remplacer valablement. Les sciences sociales ont cherché à pénétrer l'impénétrable. Là, je me réfère à Gabriel Marcel, qui estimait que l'homme était mystère. Chercher à pénétrer profondément l'homme, est-ce que ce n'est pas aussi chercher à le détruire? Ils ont saccagé les mystères, sans les remplacer. Ils ont détruit les croyances et l'univers symbolique, sans les remplacer. Autrement dit, ils ont démystifié les dogmes. J'ai l'impression que l'homme vit aussi de ce qu'il croit. La conséquence est telle que de la question de l'archéologie, des sciences sociales, des sciences humaines, la question de l'épistémologie se déplace et devient celle de l'éthique, au fond des recherches intellectuelles. Je cherche ceci, pourquoi? J'expose telle théorie, pourquoi? La question de l'épistémologie est transformée en question d'ordre éthique. L'archéologie, en ses conséquences, et parfois a produit des conséquences assez inattendues. On remarquera que les peuples et les sociétés trop fouillées, qui ont été trop fouillées, souffrent des incohérences, des superpositions des cultures incompatibles, des inadaptations de nulle part, ni chez eux, ni chez ailleurs. En fait, toutes ces pratiques ont atteint la mémoire, ont atteint les mémoires collectives. Et tous les conflits, toutes les guerres sont dues justement à cette dissolution des mémoires collectives. L'archéologie, lorsqu'elle est mal interprétée, elle est conduite au reniement même de l'archéologie. Chez les peuples colonisés, on dira toujours précolonial, colonial, post-colonial. Et lorsqu'on analyse, qu'est-ce qui importe? C'est colonial, ces peuples n'existent pas sauf qu'ils sont rapportés à colonial. Regardez cette constance. Ces peuples ont toujours exposé à prouver des évidences. Nous sommes toujours des hommes. Comment est-ce que l'homme peut toujours dire qu'il est homme? C'est vraiment évident. Or, c'est la situation chez certains peuples. L'archéologie, dans ce sens, et entre la métaphysique, parce qu'elle devrait fonder la mémoire collective, elle est très pertinente, mais lorsqu'elle est mal utilisée, conduit à des effets inattendus. Et le projet qui s'ensuit, ce serait justement de chercher à décoloniser, à comment décoloniser l'archéologie. Et pour cela, il nous faut inciter sur un dialogue inter- ou anthropocentrique. Avec une manière diffuse, nous pouvons dire que la philosophie, c'est le devoir de l'homme à habiter les choses. Jamais inversement, à être habité par les choses. C'est à reconnaître que chaque chose a sa place. Et surtout à laisser les choses, chaque chose à sa place. Et cela a des implications énormes sur toutes les questions d'environnement, sur toutes les questions des relations humaines, des relations sociales. Et ce dialogue continue. Nous avons quelques essais dans presque toutes les cultures. Et je m'achemine vers l'éducation comme ce qui pourrait être un moyen de formation à l'humanité commune. Mais constatons quelques défis. En fait, ici, il s'agissait des modèles que nous avons introduits après les crises que nous avons vécues. Nous avons instauré un modèle d'éducation au vivre ensemble. Nous l'appelons itorero, c'est un terme kinyarwanda. C'est un espace assez retiré où on apprend les jeunes à reconstruire leur humanité, sans frontières. Et le questionnement que je posais à l'éducation, je suis aussi éducateur, c'est qu'on a constaté que tous les grands entraînements se font dans des coins reculés. Les exemples sont multiples. Les formations religieuses se font dans des endroits retirés. Les formations militaires, autant. Mais l'école traditionnelle, c'était aussi ça. Il y avait l'académie, c'était une école assez retirée. Lorsque Platon inventait l'académie, c'était pour y placer des étudiants de façon assez retirée. Lorsqu'Aristote créait le lycée, c'était pour y placer des jeunes à la formation de l'humanité. Mais nous constatons que parfois dans nos écoles, l'école actuelle, moderne, est devenue comme un lieu public. Et chez certains, c'est à peu près comme un marché, un métro, un bus. Là se pose le problème de l'identification. Lorsque l'école est mise à l'échelle publique, il se pose beaucoup de problèmes de l'identification. En fait, le modèle que nous avons introduit au Rwanda, c'est un modèle de chercher à faire de l'école un passage, mais aussi une continuité. Une continuité parce que l'homme est toujours le même. J'aurais dû dire que j'ai fait ma thèse de doctorat sur Hegel, sur la phénoménologie de l'esprit. En fait, là, j'ai appris que l'homme est déjà plein. L'homme est déjà plein. L'éducation ne lui apporte rien, sinon un accomplissement. En fait, c'est une continuité. Mais en même temps, une rupture parce que le milieu de la quotidienneté conditionne l'homme à être autrement qu'il devrait être. Autrement dit, à n'être pas identique au concept de l'homme. L'école devrait nous permettre de passer de la nature à la culture. Autrement dit, d'acquérir vraiment une personnalité. En termes d'identité discernable, mais aussi indiscernable. Là, je me référais à Leibniz. Pour penser l'école moderne par rapport justement à la formation de l'humanité, c'est par rapport au passage, transition. Nous avons besoin de créer des écoles où l'enfant est sous la surveillance, la guidance, l'attention de son disciple, comme il se faisait à l'époque des anciens Grecs, de confirmation mais aussi par rapport à soi, de créer une personnalité. Par rapport à l'univers, l'univers moderne était un univers assez profane. L'univers sacré n'a plus de sens. En fait, comme je suis avec les artistes, vous remarquez que l'univers est un monde de signification, plein de signification. Et l'école devrait nous permettre d'arriver encore là. Et de construire un univers de croyances, mais aussi de créer un univers de la culture. Et par rapport au temps, aussi être dans le temps. En fait, je me disais que l'école, pour former à l'humanité, devrait être un retrait, une retraite contre la banalité mondaine, contre l'espace profane, contre l'espace pensé comme agrégat. Autrement dit, créer un milieu où tout est presque signification, mais où trouver ces significations. L'école ne crée pas quelque chose de nouveau. L'école reçoit l'enfant et l'enfant provient de quelque part. C'est assez profond de remarquer que la famille est un lieu du symbolisme. Il y a le symbole du père. Le père n'est pas seulement un papa, c'est aussi un symbole. Il y a le symbole de la mère, du fils. En fait, qu'est-ce que ces personnes en famille symbolisent? Le père symbolise de quoi? Qui? La mère symbolise de qui? En fait, je me disais qu'à partir de cette éducation familiale, où tout est symbole, lorsque je rencontre une grande ou vieille ou adulte maman, mère, femme, cela me renvoie au symbolisme de la mère, de ma mère ou de ta mère. Je rencontre un homme, ça me renvoie au symbolisme du père. Et je rencontre une fille ou un garçon, ça me renvoie au symbolisme de la sœur. La famille est un lieu où on devrait, encore une fois, renforcer pour créer cet univers symbolique et qui se traduira dans les relations sociales, humaines. En fait, lorsque l'homme manque justement cet univers symbolique, il perd son identité. Mais ce qui est très dommage, l'identité n'est pas complètement perdue parce qu'elle est récupérée à travers des identifications négatives, des identités négatives. La conséquence, l'homme passe d'être humain et devient simplement un personnage. Je me disais que l'école moderne pourrait peut-être se faire inspirer de l'école traditionnelle, de l'école ancienne, à l'époque peut-être des Grecs. Là, nous sommes au 6e siècle avant Jésus-Christ, 5e, 3e, 4e. Et penser l'école et réorganiser pour l'humanité à l'école, sur le modèle de l'école traditionnelle. Que l'école soit un lieu de retrait. Que l'école soit comme une famille. Que l'école soit comme un temple. Je reviens au temple d'Apollon, où Aristote formait ses futurs disciples. Mais que surtout l'école devienne un lieu de dette. En étudiant, je m'inscris sur la chaîne du dette pour qu'ensuite je vais donner quelque chose. Nous, les professeurs, nous sommes toujours en conflit avec les étudiants. Pas un conflit, mais plutôt nous sommes toujours insatisfaits parce que nous disons que nous avons trouvé les universités, nous avons l'obligation de les remettre aux futures générations telles que ces universités ont été retrouvées. Mais aussi l'école comme lieu d'investissement et du capital humain. Et je termine par quelques projets que je voudrais suggérer à nous. Et pour encore une fois, la formation à l'humanité commune, nous avons besoin d'insister sur quelques projets que je propose, d'élaborer des manuels épistémologiques et méthodologiques et critiques. Parce que les livres de sciences sont remplis de mauvaises questions, de fausses questions même. Contre le diffusionnisme, le déterminisme, initier d'autres paradigmes de recherche archéologique, mais aussi renforcer les langues des nations. Christian, il aime citer toujours des langues. Peut-être il pourra vous en faire quelques exemples. Les langues sont des contenus, des véhicules de savoir, mais aussi construire des corpus locaux. La plupart des cultures ne sont pas écrites. La plupart des civilisations ne sont pas écrites et on ne sait pas où les retrouver. Peut-être que l'UNESCO pourrait aussi contraindre les écoles et les universités à élargir les corpus d'enseignement à l'histoire positive des peuples. Mais aussi, quelquefois, interdire sur l'espace public des discours qui vont à l'encontre de la création de l'humanité commune. D'autres projets qu'on pourrait proposer, en fait, il y a ce que Gaston Bachelard appelle la rupture épistémologique. Nous avons des générations qui ont été victimes des sciences sociales. Pour ces générations, on peut toujours les laisser, mais permettre aux jeunes générations de refaire leur propre histoire de l'humanité positive. Et dans ce sens, je me proposais qu'on pourrait créer quelques espaces pédagogiques. En fait, lorsque l'écologie risque de commencer, la plupart des exploiteurs passaient par des écoles de formation des peuples autres que le leur. En fait, on pourrait procéder inversement et créer des espaces pédagogiques d'éducation à l'humanité, mais aussi élaborer et valider les modules d'éducation universelle à l'humanité. Je devrais vous remercier et m'excuser de mon long discours. Merci. Oui, oui, c'est bon.
Maintenant, si vous voulez maintenant. Merci beaucoup.
Ok.
Yes, merci. Merci beaucoup, Isaie. Et je pense que, bon, évidemment, c'était très très rapide parce que je pense que vous êtes habitué à le faire, donc du coup, vous a suivi rapidement. Mais je pense qu'il y aurait éventuellement beaucoup de questions à vous poser, peut-être maintenant ou peut-être après l'intervention des chrétiens aussi. So if anyone has questions or comments. Otherwise, we could also go to Christian Yampeta's presentation, and then we will have more time and more content related to both to discuss if you want. Maybe. Yeah. Peut-être c'est mieux comme ça en fait. On écoute Christian et après on prend quelques questions.
Ensemble.
Oui, très bien.
Très bien.
Hello, my name is Christian Yampeta, and I am an artist and a researcher. I research at Goldsmiths at the Visual Cultures Department, and my object of study is concerned partially with late antiquities and African and Africana thought and practices, so philosophy in particular. So for today, I have a great honor to be here and to learn from this very moment. So it's also my greatest pleasure to have traveled with Isaie Nzeyimana, who just spoke, and through a number of conversations that extend over actually a number of years, I've had a renewed interest in in the role and the uses of thought. So I will be able to respond partially to Isaie's conversation because I conceived or I approached this very moment as what I will call a working session, which is to say nothing is really conclusive, and I hope that some of the ideas that I will go through are mobile. So then this is what I propose to go through. I've titled the session Our Common Ghosts. So I will talk briefly about it, and then as a kind of contextual horizon, from which I will delve a bit more into a specific idea that has been put forward by Isaie of Uvandimge, and then find a way of problematizing it from the perspective of Black Athena specifically. And then I will conclude with Injana, so another reading, another kind of dissedimentive reading of the common concepts. So then a few words about the terms. The title Our Common Ghosts arrived to us through, or to myself, through a series of works I've been conducting with a large number of colleagues who are spread over about 23 countries, or 24, in the context of another roadmap school, which is a research concerned with the histories of art education in our case in the Africa cluster within former colonies. And then there are a few commentaries to make. For example, that just preliminaries really is that throughout my intervention, I want to dispel the idea by which there is a division of thought or so between the North and the South within Africa. So hereby I rely on the work of others who have problematized the dissatisfaction, or in fact demonstrated the inaccuracy and pettiness of the use sub-Sahara. Instead, I evoke some of my theoretical, say, guidance, which include Kojo Eshun, my supervisor at Goldsmiths, and also conversations recent and ongoing with Lewis Gordon in New York, and some of his own reading, of course, largely also drawing from Martin Bernal. And of course, Isaie Nzeyimana and his colleagues in Rwanda, who we share and also depart from certain concepts. Throughout the presentation, there are kind of a number of works which I will call visual myth maps, following Shabazz Palace's sonic myth map for the trip back. I think that's how the track is called. So I would call them some kind of visual structures at the hand of it's a kind of concretization of philosophical practices at the hand of my own artistic gesture of I guess modernist, Afro-modernist traditions. So then I'm discontent about the term Uvandimge and also attracted to it in many ways. Partially because the starting point of Isaie's conversation is unicity, which is rendered as Uvandimge, which is a kind of shared communality. And throughout the past maybe 5 years, I've been attracted to thinking and learning around the question of how to live together. In particular, and following the context of Black Athena Reloaded, I would like to evoke the the alignment I have with Ubuvandimge, which, as we will see later, is of course shared throughout, at least linguistically, within a number of geographical traditions that are that surround Rwanda, from which Isaie speaks, but also not, as you saw. So then Ubuvandimge, as coming from the same womb, is also rendered in the meaning itself of Africa, which is suggested to mean Afrika in Kemet, so not in Arabic per se, which would be translated, I'm following Lewis Gordon here, as turning toward the opening of Ka. And perhaps it might be a jump to say that there are certain similarities with Chi, but let's hold that as an image. So then there is a kind of primordial womb that that we're compelled to address, meaning, as Isaie speaks of man, by which you mean human, arrives from the same place. So since the idiom that we've entered is philosophical, let's maybe remain there and problematize the questions in that way. I should also state that I'm not a philosopher and I don't aspire to be one, but I approach it as one of the many disciplines that are concerned with the modes of engagement with reality, as we might use any other idiom. So it's not a discipline for me, but a practice maybe. So the line of thinking, some of which Isaie exemplifies in some ways, but also not, is that philosophy or wisdom might have begun in ancient Egypt. That's not possible necessarily, or say biologically really, because if humankind depends on intelligence, and the fact that humanity might have existed for so many thousand years before Athens was on the map, then we might not have been here altogether. So therefore, it's of use to reconsider, not so much to understand the precise origins, because perhaps it might be not so easy, and maybe it is indeed not necessarily a good question as it's been suggested, but instead to acknowledge the shared, in some ways ghosts, but shared concerns that might have occurred elsewhere. So here I hope you can read along, so I won't read myself, but I highlight a text again given to me by Lewis Gordon of the 12th dynasty in Kemet, which is what is ancient Egypt. In itself, it speaks of what wisdom might be. In particular, the lingering around wisdom, which is often rendered as, say, philosophia, a more precise, more slower reading that goes beyond Greek, outlines that a number of words already highlight a connection to far more southern origins of the word Sophia itself, which is to say, sadly, I'm not trained to pronounce, which is why the text now functions as an image, to pronounce some of these terms, but I suppose already it's possible to trace the similarity of satiety, satisfaction, which quickly are forms of embodied knowledge. So I will come back to that a little later in the presentation. I think I've done enough commentary on this session, which I insist again as a working session. And in particular, I would like to say that the following maybe 20 minutes or so are a closer reading. In fact, it's a kind of minor history within the problematics that are unfolded through Black Athena. In other words, I am operating in their shadow, or in the constructs that have been in the kind of under the roof, in their understanding, as it were, with what have been said now, in order to trace a minor history within this this tradition. So specifically, I'm going to focus on the term idiorhythmy, and the problem and the danger, same as Isaie, of speaking within a kind of Greek tradition, because I want to highlight again that I'm willing to maybe pronounce a controversy, particularly here in Greece, to say that referring to the Hellenic traditions in a manner that is often put forward by Euromodernity as Greek would be the same as today suggesting that all of us who speak English are English. So therefore, when I say Greek, I am acknowledging all the varieties of, linguistic traditions and otherwise that might have joined Greek speaking forcefully or willingly. Nevertheless, there is a term, idiorhythmy, which I'm going to focus on in order to trace and to disjoint it from its origin, which is, academically speaking, occasioned by Roland Barthes at the Collège de France in 77 and 78, with his lecture titled Comment vivre ensemble, and translated as How to Live Together. So, in my understanding and in my, intervention, I insist on disjoining the term for a number of reasons that might appear throughout. But I hope that by doing so, by effectively desedimenting, which is a term by the name will come to me, it's later in the footnotes. By desedimenting the term, it's a manner of looking towards, again, ideas of knowing, learning, and feeling, which, in my understanding, help us or might help us to consider our responsibility not only to each other, but also to other aspects and mechanisms of reciprocity. So, idiorhythmy in its historical context might have started in Egypt, so in the desert. Particularly, this is somewhere in the map. There were 3 types of asceticism at the time, and the time we're talking about is this, so 3rd to 6th century in particular. And the 3 types were of asceticism at the time, Christian asceticism that is, were of course in great conversation with Greek and Roman traditions. And the 3 types were Hermetism, at least those who are mapped and acknowledged, Hermetism, semi-Hermetism, and monasticism. The idiorhythmy refers, or it's more associated with the semi-Hermetism, so which dwelt specifically in the deserts of Nitria and Kelia. So that's perhaps the geographical and historical context, but it's also important to say that today idiorhythmy is specifically practiced, in fact associated with the monastic and ascetic traditions on Mount Athos, north here in Greece. I am not able, for the sake of time, to delve much deeper into Mount Athos, but I'm happy to talk about it afterwards, or to share the literature or existing research around it. It looks a little bit like this, and you can somehow, that's Mount Athos, somehow have an idea of the timeline. So, which is to say, the desert practices of Egypt still find their way, as it were, today in on Mount Athos. So again, we went through the time, and the reason I think it's important to focus on this specific tradition is because, and this is my thesis, the idiorhythmic communities of Nitria and cities were transnational. So not to say utopian, but they had a certain transnational outlook on life, on how to be and how to share the world. So and this transnationalism was composed of philosophy, belief systems, and life practices from north, south, east, and west, beyond the sole influence of Hebraic, Greek, or Roman traditions. So the other reason why the focus on this moment is crucial is because it could be argued that the definition of East and West occurred at the time of collision of Christian religion with the state, that is the Roman tradition, the Roman Empire, with the Edict of Theodosius. As such, the new condition of Christianity, which until then was a persecuted practice, the moment it moved from marginality and became centralized, then the marginal figures of the hermits and the semi-hermits instead became criminalized or persecuted. And so the idiorhythmic communities had to disband, and instead the monastery became the model institution, and the desert, that's my argument, moves into the interior. And so if the ascetic, as we will see in a moment, was fighting against the demon, again understood problematically, then the demon also traveled with the new monasteries, with and within all institutions modeled after the monastery. And I think that's more or less a model for quite a number of state apparatuses of the West, which again have been transposed elsewhere. This is why the institution of seminaries in former colonies is a vector to these histories in the Egyptian desert, and therefore they provide a kind of reading of the demonology of institution, which is to say demonology of power, that is dominant Western power. I find the conversations and the work and the working with Isaie particularly interesting for some of these reasons, but also because I actually learn a great deal about myself, about the world, through the conversations and through translating some of these concepts within our, or again as a model, within the locales. So that's the background. And so now I'm gonna just only highlight a few of these concepts because, of course, I'm not shy of footnotes. So then I will try to go through as good as possible. So the you can ask, what is a French, English, Dutch, Kinyarwanda, German speaking figure like myself doing with a Greek notion? How on earth did I get to that? Well, it happens indeed that how to live together as a as a philosophical or as a as a as a study within visual cultures, was approached by Roland Barthes through this specific term of idiorhythmie. And of course, it's a composite of Greek, so to speak, which is from within what I will call political theology. And it means one's own rhythm. And those of you who speak Greek might, of course, derive the meaning already. And it means, and its implication is to live together but alone. So it meant that historically, these nuns and monks retained, or ascetics, I should say, retained their own ways of prayer, one's own practices and cultures around food, one's own manners of dress, and they shared instead a water well, a bakery, or a library. So it's true that some of these ways of life were modeled after the Greek philosophical sects and traditions, and that numerous of these members actually were in the desert were fugitives. So they will be escaping to pay imperial Roman taxes, or fleeing a military service, or eluding, and so on. So you can find already the writing or the meaning sedimented within English itself, whereby the hermit relates to Eremus. Sadly, I don't speak Greek well, but that will mean desert. But also the image of desertion in itself relates literally to going to the desert. This case, the African desert. And so, again, we're speaking about the moment when Christianity was still a marginalized practice. Nevertheless, then, at least for me, you can still, if you stay with the word idiorhythmie, and if you detach and start to analyze its components, you realize that idios is also a philosophical term. Maybe we'll get to it if time permits, that renders the notions of idiot and idiom, while at the same time, in my understanding, perhaps incorrectly, it conveys a number of concepts of identity formation, including, well, identity, idea, and so on, and all their relatives. So consequently, at least for me, I understand the word idios to be an invitation to conceptualize and to articulate an idea of being in the world. I do understand being in the world as being with, forcefully or otherwise. It is really the precondition of any being. It's often in common, communally, and in communion. This is, of course, not without its problems, as we might see later. So I see idios, outside of its theological contexts, as the idea of being in the world. That is a theory or a poiesis of world forming. So I understand rhythm as the putting into practice of this idea of living, of being, and the regulation and determination in space and in time of being in the world. So the scholarship around the term rhythmos has a long and complex origin of meanings centered around, as we might see, or as, at least as an image, a distinctive form, a disposition, and proportion, all of which allude to a way or a manner of flowing, becoming, doing, or unfolding in the world. So then this meaning indicates a transitional disposition of something animated, that is, in life, such as the form of a movement, but also someone's character or nature. So then I consider rhythm as a form of an attitude, and therefore a form of life. And this might be important to as a to work through in relation to the ascetics. So I think I gave a kind of reading of what the monks were doing and the ascetics in the Egyptian desert, and instead there are a number of terms that come to the fore which are worth delving into, again particularly within the space of visual cultures, but for the sake of time I will move along and only highlight what anachoresis might mean, which is a term that again philosophically is interesting but also in practice, which is that of which is a movement upwards. So as opposed to kata of categories and so on, as ana of a movement from upward movements, and so choresis of choreography and so on. So anachoresis characterized that moment of going into the desert. And so why did the ascetic go into the desert? Why would someone leave all behind? And what is the productive and communitarian dimension of this departure of anachoresis? Is there any affirmation in the anachoresis of those who deserted without ever returning? How can a study about how to live together dwell on the idea of leaving the world altogether? For this, we invoke the words of Callistus Ware, a theologian, who affirms the value of the flight into the deserts, which is evident if we take into account the meaning that the desert possessed for these early Christian ascetics. Desertion had twofold significance. One, it was a place where God is to be found. So the example, the prototype is Moses, but also Moses Moses is said to have met God face to face in the desert of Sinai. And at the same time, it was the place where the demons dwell. So the second meaning of the demons is vividly emphasized in the life of Antony. As Antony withdraws into the desert, he hears demons shouting to him, "Depart from our territory. What business have you here in the desert?" So the solitary in withdrawing into the desert has the double aim. One is to meet God and to fight, second, the demon. So in both cases, the ascetic is not being selfish, and his or her purpose is not to escape but to encounter. He or she goes out to discover God and to achieve union with the divine through prayer, and this is something that helps others, because the ascetic also goes out to confront the demons, not running away from danger, but advancing to meet it. And this is also a way of helping others, because the devil with whom he and she enters into combat is the common enemy of all humankind. Therefore, there's nothing self-centered around the act of anachoresis. So I would like to retain the formulation of the common enemy of all humankind, and to later on highlight why that's an interesting category that in particular played out in the Egyptian deserts, and how this still has influence on the contemporary institution of the West. And so I'm not sure if you can read this properly, but this is the entry in the dictionary of deities and demons in the Bible. It's quite it's an interesting text, and here we're looking at the entry on demon. So you learn that, of course, demon had a number of meanings already within pre-Socratic and Socratic traditions, which were neither positive nor negative, but later on became, of course, negative within Christianity, associated with, to do with the duality posed and associated with the devil instead. So we continue, and one way to do it is to study rhythmos, which was within the scholarship understood as the common concept for critical thought, which could be argued is against the common enemy of all humankind, but rhythmos in itself was a manner of mastering the desert. It's important to trace that within the scholarship here, since we were again still speaking within a certain kind of, I guess, philosophical tradition, that the question of rhythm, so way before comment vivre ensemble, how to live together, was pronounced, the question of rhythm was already quite studied. It had received considerable attention within the Western studies. Aristotle and Plato had engaged with rhythm. Modern and contemporaries of Barthes had also written about rhythm. Bergson, Bachelard, Deleuze, Guattari, Derrida, Foucault, Kristeva, and Lefebvre had all written about rhythm in some ways. There are many other scholars as well, who include Mesconic, Serre, Ravesson, and before them, de Biron. Even Marcel Mauss had somehow written about rhythm. And within anti-colonial studies, Jean Nardal and Senghor had written about rhythm, and I recently learned about a Dutch Surinamese writer who had written about rhythm in relation to cinema in the 30s. So therefore, rhythm seems to have a crucial significance for any ontology or any discourse on ontology, insofar as it speaks to the relation of time and space, of difference to repetition, and of mediality. And indeed, discourses about rhythm take place during paradigm shifts. This is the thesis of Paola Crespi in conversation with theorist and art critic and curator Sunil Magnani. And I suppose it makes sense to think about rhythm today in these moments of turbulence, and how the communities and life practices who had modeled themselves around the sole purpose of organizing their own rhythm become relevant. So I will spare you this for a moment and instead go through the importance of rhythm as a kind of deformative and at the same time transformative character, which is best rendered within Idios rhythm. And maybe the interesting part will be to stay with the likes of Benveniste, who finds that within Greek tradition, the word rhythm go very far back. So, this is where the reading of rhythm as a form of life emanates, but it's quite, as he says, rhythm has to be worked out with this, has to be studied with the slow working out of philosophers. We don't really have time for a slow working out, so instead I would somehow summarize the thesis of Benveniste, who finds that rhythm, as written here, never meant rhythm until from the 6th until the 4th century before our era. Instead, rhythm was never applied to a regular movement of waves, and its constant meaning was a distinctive form, a proportioned figure, an arrangement, a disposition, in conditions of use which are otherwise extremely varied. So then, how is it possible that the idea of, or the semantics of form gave rise to the notion of rhythm itself, as we understand it today, and defined earlier? So this is because, again, the shift occurred, and rhythm came to mean a movement as we know it. But I would like to invoke the earlier, not so much definitions, but usage of the word rhythm. So and then it's in its relation to idios. Again, it's a term that is found within the literature of Greek traditions, which had a political connotation, and in fact a political category, insofar as the figure within a certain moment within the Athenian democracy, idiotes was a in its meaning of private. It's possible to say that private at the time meant deprived of political life. Again, I hope that you who speak Greek can instruct me if I'm completely wrong. At the time, according to some of the scholarship, this is what is put forward. So you can imagine that a community that describes itself as outside of the political life as a choice is in some ways is of interest. So I think I want to go further and perhaps somewhat go towards a summary and towards a synthesis, in particular towards a reading within Kinyarwanda itself, since we started with the term uvandimwe in its relation to here and its problematics within the conduit of the Black Athena. So uvandimwe, again, understood as from the same belly, from the same womb, as the very meaning itself of Africa, and at the same time as a shared condition, particularly if you look at the shared linguistic characters of language geographically within the continent. So here is important also to disagree with Bart, who locates the kind of utopian desires within low-key and privacy. In fact, I would argue that idiorhythmy, while it looks like private, is always engaged in a kind of being sensitive to the world. So I think that's what the kind of Africana thought is attempting to. Is a kind of insistence to movement, which, despite erasures and endings, established a continuity at all costs through the insistent particularities and of versions and of idios, which disagrees somewhat again with Barth's reification of the ancient, that is Greek and Latin, as the sole site of knowledge of how to live together. Rather, idiorhythm as the disjoint category is a transformer and transtemporal in a lateral movement that initiates and invents. To quote the others, I would say that idios rhythm is a poiesis, a kind of insistent previousness evading each and every natal occasion, and it is a radicalism that cannot be understood within the particular context of its genesis. And this, in a way, will be my invitation to think Greek philosophy altogether. And indeed, what is a radicalism if it's not a break and a birth at once, a putting into action of one's own ideas and resolutions? So, and here then follows a reading of what the Rwandan idiom philosophically considers rhythm. And here I'm borrowing the words from Isaie. Again, by saying Rwandan, I also mean quite a large linguistic system, which can't be easily categorized. And instead, I want to go to the term injana, which means to go with. And I think this might render an understanding of other terms that I would like to put forward. And so injana is, of course, suggests a rhythm of and an agency of going, coming, a movement, but also a space and a time in which that happens. Already this presupposes a kind of organization of powers or abuses thereof. So therefore, I think it's a useful category to study. So towards the ending, then, and instead some openings, because I think there are a number of connections to be made. One is to highlight that within the lectures, so within the site in which I found the word idiorhythmie, it remains underdefined and understudied. And so instead, drawing on as a model of practice, drawing on the transgeographies of rhythm that I hope have been transmitted here, and drawing from the conjunctural understanding of idios, I timidly propose a suggestion that idios rhythm is not a retreat and not inaction, but an action of being sensitive to what is to come. So idios is precisely oriented towards unending, and this unending finds expression in partager, as defined by, say, Nancy, as a genesis that takes form as rhythm, makes and gives space and time of sociability. In fact, I would change that into sociality and not sociability, without denying to or resorting, without denying or resorting to the claims of a previous condition or a shared past. So I would say that idios rhythm sketches out an interior but public space, so not so much only a retreat, that is in the service of or in conversation with the world, to be defined. So in guise of an ending, here are instead some openings. What is the relation between, say, the oppressive rhythm, which is opposite to idios rhythm, as a mode of power that imposes itself, or the notion of the demon? Because I would like to come back again to the common enemy of the humankind, because I think that's a serious formulation, because it puts forward the idea that the communal, the common might not be as stable or benevolent as we see. So what happens of the common when it's articulated to the question of the enemy? To say the demon are the common enemy of all humankind is to say that the demons are xenos, they are outside of the human. That's why they are the enemy. They are that which threatens humankind. This makes the desert fathers and mothers becoming into the defenders of the threshold between the human and the non-human, or between the human and the outside being the demons, the xenos. But if the rhythmic medium, I did not define it that well in this direct presentation, but I mean by the rhythmic medium, I mean in opposition to idios rhythm. So the rhythmic medium as that which defines a large rhythm that is again outside of the self, the human. So if the rhythmic medium is also the common enemy, then what that means that the desert moves the moment when the monastery became sociable, i.e. when the monastery came into the city or inhabited environments, and therefore in what way does the anachoresis still take place effectively for this act to function as generative? I would say that I think in jhana, if you were able maybe to consult the presentation later, that might read in jhana as generosity, as ubuntu, as a genesis, might give some answer. But at the same time, the implication of the sentence, the common enemy of all humankind, implies that the term common is mobile. And so, and perhaps the term common is not inherently virtuous, and that the production of the common and or into the communal seems to be an inherently human act, often seen as positive, at least in terms of Indiana or Ufandimge. But now the common is leveraged against the human. The common enemy is what comes outside of the human and menaces it. This therefore means that the common is not always virtuous, and in fact it also means that the common doesn't have to be human altogether. Otherwise, how could humanity be menaced by the enemy that is common? How seriously are we to take this study today, this definition of the demons as the common enemy? And so, again, it's important to read this in relation to these definitions given by the scholarship of the demon as actually a problematic figure that can't be easily transposed and in a binary mode, but within Christianity is quite binary. So for that reason, I think that, and I rely on others, that the definition of the common enemy is by no means a simple metaphor, and it's not poetry. It's a form of life. In fact, the demon is the form of non-life, because the demon comes outside of the human. The demon does not belong to life. So this is all interesting philosophically, but actually what it means in practical terms and historically is that it renders the importance of the desert and the demon in relation to the Western institution quite sharply. Because why does the desert always play such a crucial role in so many religions? Let's just stay with Christianity, if that is one of the ideal spheres of the West. And I think this might be explained in part by understanding the desert and its meteorological conditions, which produce visions. So the desert creates its own forms of apparitions, of mirages, of fata morgana. Under certain atmospheric conditions, the desert generates images. And in fact, here I'm in direct conversation with my supervisor, and the combination of heat and of the horizon, light, temperature would create different kind of apparitions or different kind of meteorological phenomena, which would then be narrated as apparitions, as devils, or as demons, or as God. Today, we might call them mirages, but in which case, before, they might have been easily called demon and God. Which is why the geography, say, Africa, is important and in itself active, so it has its own agency. The sun, the horizon, the physical conditions of the sun, light, temperature, heat, sand, all combined create apparitions which 2,000 years ago, perhaps, we would have called demons, but now we would call mirage. In other words, the desert is a place that creates its own form of media. The desert is a media generating system that is, you can say that the desert is geo-atmospheric media. It's in its own right. So what is important here is the sedimentative reading of the ancient vision, shaped by theological understanding of the phenomena. And this theological understanding in ancient times is it was predisposed to see geological phenomena as evidence of demonic forces, as evidence of non-human entities. So again, why still does it play an important role? And it's because in the pre-scientific contexts, the theological formulation of this phenomena would have been advanced and resonated with their times. So what if the demon was actually just an atmospheric phenomenon? But of course, this doesn't change or alter the understanding of Christianity or the belief or the demon in the mind and the form of life of these ancient figures and those who follow it today. But to do this, it's not to want to insult anyone, but is to highlight the potent agency of the desert itself and its influence on today's institutions. So the agents of the desert, as encountered in the in Egypt, it created its own physical conditions, and so it's not just a location where the ascetics went. The desert is an agent because the desert already within asceticism is where the demons dwell. And so at the same time, the desert is where to get actually in touch with God. I mean, Jesus also went into the desert, and so the desert really is a zone of intense forces that in which the demonic and the divine stage a war or are at war with each other. And so the it's not just the background, so we can't dismiss the fact that actually this took place within a specific geographical location. And so if we go back to 380, at the moment when a precise and consistent ordering took place as an architectural, temporal, and social and habitual order that was imposed upon the ascetics and later on transposed from the monastery to other state apparatuses, including schools and hospitals. So we can then ask, what is actually the hospital fighting against? Or what is the school fighting against? Well, in conclusion, I would say that there is always a theological basis of the architecture of the school or of the hospital, precisely because it's taken over from the monastery, which itself was fighting against the demons of the desert. So there is effectively a kind of demonology of the present, which starts, or at least is accentuated within the desert and gets transposed into, I guess, modern problems, including, historically the plague might have been one of those, the bacteria, but it's also easily transposed on morality, sexuality, sociality itself. So part of the ordering imperative of the monastery and its, I'll call them progenies, is to impose order on sociality and knowledge itself. I will end there. Thank you very much.
Thank you both of you. Thank you, Isaie, and thank you, Christian. Well, I think that today, in particular, even more than other times, I think it's quite difficult to immediately react to what is being heard, because it's somehow not just because of the complexity, but of the amount of different new references that you've been giving us. And I was thinking today that for me this is part of the exercise of the Parliament of Bodies, like basically creating spaces where we are able to listen to singular voices in the process of thinking, right? Which is something that we mostly don't do anymore, because we just listen to the same things once and again, right? So one of the difficulties today might be how to react to what is being said. And I have many questions, of course. Some of the questions come from the fact that I was trained myself as a philosopher. So basically I suffer through the tradition of philosophy, and now many of the questions that you kind of brought up and put on the table, are popping up in my head again. But I also have questions related to the history of religion and to the way in which both of you remain very much in dialogue with, not just with philosophy, but both with theology. And I was wondering, why is this this proximity with theology so strong. But maybe before we go to my questions, that I have many, I like to see if some of the people from the that are here today want to participate, asking a question or suggesting something or making a comment. Yes.
Hi. Hello? Hi, Christian? Yes. I'm up here. I felt like, thank you for your presentation. It's great to have you here in Athens and meet you again here. I was just wondering, I felt like you just got to an amazing point in linking what I think I've understood of your presentation with schools. And I was wondering if you could just elaborate, even if it's ad lib, to the previous presentation and kind of loop it back. So I kind of felt like you started to say something and then you abruptly ended. So is it possible for you to comment, or is that asking too much?
Well, thank you for having me here, Athens. And I am learning a lot. I think that in starting, I would say that there exists many forms of schools in particular. And I'm a student of those who think that schools are can be found anywhere. So I think there is, I mean, my interest in the work of Isaie is that it actually is particularly rich because it's coded in a manner that demands a number of reading, because just I will start with going through some of the concepts that like some of the specificities of the concept that Isaie put forward, one of which is to be surprised as the precondition of, say, being or being attentive, receptive, of growth, and so on, hospitable, etc. And that, but also as a precondition of learning. But then the ending of it is almost the opposite, whereby the retreat is the desired form of transmitting knowledge. So if we're to understand these two conditions together, I think the analysis demands a certain synthesis of the two terms, which is situated somewhere in the middle. But in reference to my own propositions, which is that of the specific school within the West as a in many ways an oppressive institution, cannot be understood outside of theology. And this is also to go back to the to Paul's question. I think that I'm not particularly loyal to theology, but I'm also not afraid of it, in the sense that it's important to study and to analyze the conditions which shape our subject and form us. And if a school is an instrument of subject formation, particularly within former colonies, then it's imperative to engage with specific moments of political theology, because many forms of the trainings of those who have influence over the forming of the subjects, i.e. those who run school, who teach, who lecture, have been formed within these traditions. So, so it's not to dispel it, but to find a vocabulary able to address these contradictions, and in order to institute other modes of learning and making that are equipped and aware of some of the the very material that constitutes its own being. So, which is to say, I consider this, there is such a thing as a formal education, as a formal school. So I was, in a way, hinting to that. So I was saying that, well, that has a certain either theological or demonological reading, or I would say the theological reading derives its importance because of the very origins of institutionality as we know it in the West, which has which is a kind of fortification against the, let's say, the demons, just to keep it there. If you consider the monastic architecture as this fortified defensive structure, first against the desert and later against any form of demonic force, including, what can be called deviant forms of sexuality, moralities, and so on. And so the school is an important site, and you remember that I started the conversation actually within a location of a study of a proposition of the study of histories of specifically art education. So the term Our Common Ghosts precisely arrives from there, the moment when we realized as a networked working group within the African continent that this actually was our condition. I hope I answered your question. And maybe Isaie can also respond.
Ok, ça va. Merci. En fait, il y a quelques éléments que j'ai appréciés chez Christian, peut-être aussi à partir de la question qui vient d'être posée, c'est de faire ce commerce facile, cette intimité entre la philosophie et la théologie, et entre les deux, il plaçait ce moment du désert. C'est une démarche assez intéressante. Et je me rends compte que les deux se rejoignent. Tout au début, je soulignais justement l'importance de ces écoles, de faire de l'école un lieu de retrait. J'insiste parce que, en fait, peut-être aussi en tant qu'éducateur, je trouvais qu'on devrait repenser à ce moment d'être en retrait. Peut-être pour ceux qui font un peu d'herméneutique, réfléchir aussi sur le symbolisme du désert. En fait, c'est dommage parce que notre pays est tropical, au Rwanda c'est un pays tropical, nous n'avons pas la notion du désert. Peut-être ceux qui vivent aux côtés du désert pourraient nous aider à repenser le symbolisme du désert. Mais d'une façon approximative, je pensais que le désert était un moment assez retiré, d'être seul, mais aussi aride. De façon approximative, c'était un lieu aride et c'était un lieu ascétique. En fait, l'ascèse c'est une vertu depuis les civilisations orientales, les civilisations de la Méditerranée, mais aussi les civilisations africaines. L'ascèse est une vertu. Ça affaiblit le corps, mais ça fortifie l'esprit. Je me disais qu'à partir justement de l'exposé de Christian, que ce désert, en fait, en apparence, on allait croire que le désert était un lieu où l'homme est seul. Apparemment, il est seul, mais en réalité, il n'est pas tellement seul. Parce que le désert, c'est un lieu d'être plutôt avec soi-même, de retourner dans son intériorité. C'est là où la philosophie et la théologie se rejoignent. Dans ce désert, c'est un lieu où on n'est pas tellement seul, mais plutôt avec soi-même ou avec son Dieu. Avec soi-même, avec son Dieu, contre l'ennemi commun, le concept que j'ai vraiment apprécié. mais aussi avec les autres. Parce que les monastères, ce n'est pas des endroits singletons. Ce n'est pas des endroits où l'homme seul vit. J'ai compris que l'homme est dans un dynamisme de relation à la fois vertical, mais aussi horizontal. Vertical dans son sens qu'il est avec Dieu, son Dieu, ou avec soi-même, mais soi-même comme j'aime le terme méta, d'où vient la métaphysique. Méta, après, une histoire de transcendance. Une relation verticale avec cette transcendance, mais aussi avec une relation horizontale, parce que dans le désert, il n'est pas seul, il est avec ses amis, ses collègues, ses confrères. Ce qu'on pourrait aussi apprécier, l'exposé qui a été fait, elle est assez métaphysique, mais avec des implications théoriques, des implications politiques, des interventions, des implications sociales. L'homme est solitaire. Il n'est pas vraiment solitaire parce que, d'après l'exposé de Christian, c'est l'homme qui est parti lutter contre l'ennemi commun. Et il m'a toujours dit, dans la discussion que nous faisons, il m'a toujours dit que c'est l'ennemi commun. Et pour lutter contre cet ennemi commun, il faut aller retrouver là où il est. Il ne faut pas l'attendre qu'il viendra auprès de toi ou de moi, mais plutôt aller l'affronter où il est. Et voilà, d'autres commentaires pourraient toujours venir, parce que c'est Socrate qui le disait si bien, que la vérité n'est ni à moi, ni à toi, mais entre nous au milieu. Et ce milieu, ça doit être ici. Et j'aime souvent redire que les discussions comme ceci, ce sont des laboratoires d'idées. La philosophie ou les sciences telles que Christian le fait, ou nos jeunes collègues, il y a des sciences qui n'ont pas de laboratoire. Lorsque vous faites les mathématiques, lorsque vous faites la philosophie, la théologie, on n'a pas de laboratoire. J'aime dire que les espaces comme ceci sont des laboratoires d'idées. Il n'y a personne qui apporte la vérité, il y a plutôt quelqu'un qui apporte une opinion qui peut être discutée, abandonnée ou retenue. Je crois que c'est le contenu que je vois. En fait, c'est juste un petit supplément que je voudrais apporter. Merci.
Any other question? Because otherwise, I also had a question. I don't know if I have like if this question makes sense or not, because I've been trying to I've been trying to see if I can really follow your argument up to the end and see also the dialogue going on with Isaie, which I think is quite interesting, right? I think it's very challenging that both of you are taking this notion of the communality of the humankind, like basically like this, I mean, especially in the case of Isaie, this notion of a common bond of the humankind, right? And but it seemed to me that in your talk, Christian, you kind of move beyond that. You move beyond humanity precisely by going into the desert, right? Where the human is kind of exposed to something that is not human, and that suddenly becomes like is represented as this medium for production of images and so on, like the demon, right? But I was thinking, I don't know exactly, I mean, how to engage with your thought. I have to say that I'm fascinated. I mean, from a philosophical point of view, of the kind of coming and going of traditions and ideas that you're bringing within the Western philosophical tradition somehow. And I had the impression that at the end you were really like undoing theology and undoing the notion of humanity through the desert by this notion of the desert that is becomes like somehow like what is producing both the demon and the idea of God itself. And that somehow like even the communality of humankind is overcome by something else, right? And I don't know if I'm making sense. I just have to say that this is like basically like completely like in dialogue with what I've been hearing today, and I don't know if this is like is the case, and I don't know if this is like part of the dialogue that you've been having, basically as Isaie, you much more attached to the idea of humanity, and somehow Christian already fighting with that idea or struggling with it and not being able to fully remain with kind of work just with that notion. This is one question that I have maybe for both of you. And the second question comes from the dialogue with Black Athena itself. And basically the fact that in none of your presentations, I mean, coloniality has been like mentioned, but in none of your presentations appears as a kind of a, let's say, shaping force or something that has basically marked both the understanding of African tradition from the Western point of view, and that you would be like ready to undo or to confront. Since, for instance, in your case, Isaie, I was surprised to see that you mildly criticize. I mean, for instance, you go into the decolonizing archaeology, but I haven't seen you like very strongly and angrily criticizing, let's say, Western philosophical traditions for the simply destruction of African philosophy and African tradition, right? So I like to know how do you relate to basically to the Western philosophical tradition from an African perspective, or if you think that basically that if you embrace Western philosophical tradition as being precisely common to the humankind, and in that sense is for you something that is completely beyond the historical fact of colonization. I don't know if my questions make sense at all, but I'm...
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and maybe I can start. I will start by the end, and I will mention that actually I started by charting the scholarship which emerged in the wake of Black Athena. So one of the first slides was the kind of theoretical guidance, as I was referring to, is precisely in reference to the thinking that was liberated through a conversation with Black Athena. Following that, there was the undoing of the word Sophia, supposedly Greek, because it's actually much ancient than that. So I think that's what Black Athena allows to do, is to start that essentially, I guess, a pronouncement I haven't done, which I would imagine is underwritten in all of this, is why does etymology always have to be Greek or Latin? That's the question. So I think by going to Kinyarwanda in order to work out what the rhythm actually is, I find that imperative because it displaces the power of Greek or Latin as the sole site of a kind of previousness of knowledge, as the end and starting of knowledge, because essentially that's the claim. So there's a lot of undoing going on, a lot of disjointing going on, because I think that's what I would imagine that's what Black Athena allows. But the other aspect is also to work within the continent itself, within a kind of Africana or Africanity itself, to trace the modernisms which originated there. And one way is to look at I suppose some of the maps which chart the linguistic transmissions between the regions there. And so because the conversation really, in a way, this whole conversation could be had in another language. So that's, I think, what Black Athena puts forward. In a way, my conversation somehow presupposes that all of us have read Black Athena. But it's not the case, of course. Essentially, I'm starting from their shadow because I'm not either equipped or we don't really have the time to go through it. So within that presupposition, I was tracing a specific moment, a minor history within that tradition. So. One of those moments are really characterized by, on the one hand, the term uvandimge as the very meaning of Africa itself. So turning toward the womb.
They just passed me a note, so you don't have to be scared because suddenly someone comes and we always think that it's a weird thing. It's just that the translation. The translators that we have behind these blocks actually are always like a kind of the hidden working force. They've been saying that they are exhausted because we've been speaking like non-stop for a really long time. So they are saying like we need a break or we're gonna die. We will leave. We will be leaving. So just like for you to let you know that basically we can continue the conversation, but it will be without translation. That's the only thing. And I'm glad to continue the conversation because I mean I don't know. I guess that. For some of the people that came here, maybe the discussion, the debate on Black Athena is kind of complicated or strange. But of course, like for some of us that have been waiting to have this conversation and to have the unique chance of having you both here, is quite great to be able to discuss with you and have like a longer conversation. But Dimitra, you can tell them that they can totally leave, no problem, and we will remain. On va continuer sans traduction, Isaie, si ça vous paraît bien.
Oui, ça va.
Oui. Parce que vous comprenez quand même bien l'anglais et après on peut parler en français aussi.
Oui.
There's a last point I wanted to make,
Totally.
which is the precise engagement with work of Isaie and his colleagues, and particularly not only in Rwanda, but within, again, from Cairo to Johannesburg, as it's exemplified in some of the works that we are undertaking, highlights the work that remains to be done, again, in the wake of Black Athena, I would say. So it's a condition that can't be dismissed or shoved under the carpet, but actually dealt with through conversations, through critical analysis, but also specifically through a modality that allows, again, a slow working out. Again, the reason I say this is because the condition of coloniality doesn't disappear overnight just by the publication of one text. So, because I think the whole formation, and then the fact that there's a term like idios rhythm that, for me, occasioned a kind of deformative and transformal beginnings is not easily transmitted on a continent per se. So it demands these kind of gatherings, these forms of constellations, but also engagement there as well, and translations and and other forms of knowledge making and learning.
Oui, très rapidement, peut-être. La-
Can leave and I can maybe translate if you want as well.
Ok. Donc, je vais parler lentement après. Comment? Bien, en fait, la question de l'humanité, je crois que c'est une question d'évidence. C'est une question d'évidence. On ne devrait pas peut-être trop s'y attarder parce que ce soit sur le plan métaphysique, que ce soit sur le plan biologique, que ce soit sur le plan physiologique, l'homme vraiment est le même. Les différences qui existent ne sont que purement accidentelles. Porter des pagnes, aimer le pizza peut-être, ou aimer le café, c'est vraiment des différences accidentelles.
Je ne parlais pas tellement, en fait. Je comprends totalement la force, y compris pas simplement métaphysique, mais y compris politique, en fait, de cette notion d'humanité. Je parlais plutôt, justement, d'aller au-delà même de l'humanité, d'aller vraiment dans la communalité de tous les êtres. Quelque chose, en fait, qui viendrait vraiment à dépasser même la différence entre l'humain et les non-humains. Et de là, quelque part la force en fait de la notion que Christian proposait du dessert, puisque évidemment le dessert c'est un élément géographique en fait, c'est un élément non humain carrément, mais qui participe totalement en fait à la construction par exemple en fait de la théologie, de la religion, mais aussi de la notion même de l'humain. Donc je parlais évidemment, je ne questionne absolument pas en fait votre notion de communalité de l'humain. Bien au contraire, je voudrais même la dépasser. Allons au-delà même de l'humanité. And now it's becoming really troubling. But you have translation or you don't have translation? Or vous comprenez les français, hein? Yes. And we can say. If you have more questions or comments or whatever, you can also go for a drink and come back, or remain with us and come closer and follow the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think specifically in relation to Black Athena, it's for me important to highlight the importance, the geographical, the meteorological, essentially, that's something you would call a minor history following Leela Gandhi, or someone like that, of the institution of the West, but actually which took place in an African desert. I think that's in itself a point that needs to be, but every literature, I mean, most of the literature gloss over it. None of it spends time in working out the agency of that locality in itself, except maybe Reza Nagaristani, who has his own readings of the demonology of the desert, but it's a different desert. So if we're to understand the powers and the state apparatuses as they've been crafted in the Western tradition, and tracing the prototypes, then we go back again. I think that's really the method. So we go back, and then you realize that the fortification of the self through rhythm transmitted itself into an architecture, and that architecture became an infrastructure that formed quite a large ideology of which is still which still shape the present in some ways. So I think that's the modest contribution within the magnitude of Black Athena.
And then maybe after that question, if you want, we can go for a drink.
Un verre, c'est bon.
Alors, merci, bonsoir. Vous avez dit, ce que j'ai bien aimé, c'est écrire, c'est abandonner un peu aussi. Et je voudrais prendre ça comme occasion pour poser une question assez ouverte peut-être. Juste, si j'ai bien compris, à part la perspective historique, votre projet d'école, c'est aussi un projet concret. C'est aussi un projet d'avenir. Et vous avez parlé de cette dichotomie du retrait, mais aussi de la communalité. Et juste concrètement, pour encore mieux comprendre, j'aimerais bien savoir quel est pour vous... parce que j'avais l'impression que vous évitez un peu la notion du dialogue, par exemple, qui est aussi une pratique qui dépasse, qui était importante dans l'Antiquité, mais qui vient de beaucoup plus loin. Et, je voudrais juste savoir si vous avez peut-être quelque chose à dire par rapport au rôle de l'écriture et le dialogue et la notion dans cette dynamique du retrait et de la communalité dans l'école, dans une école concrète présente. Voilà, je ne sais pas si c'est...
Oui, c'est une belle question. C'est une belle question. Écrire, c'est vraiment... Écrire, ça demande beaucoup d'efforts. Mais peut-être pour être beaucoup plus simple, le concept du dialogue, du débat, c'est un concept... En fait, c'est une pratique commune à presque tous les peuples. En Afrique, on parlait des parables. Et parfois, j'animais ce qu'on appelle des cafés philosophiques. C'est une culture européenne. Mais si je reviens ici, ça doit être Socrate et les sophistes qui avaient initié les débats publics. En fait, eux avaient trouvé que la politique, c'était un sujet réservé à la classe d'élite. Et lorsque Socrate commençait la philosophie, avec les sophistes, justement, Gorgias, Protagoras, ils ont voulu que toutes les questions humaines soient de l'ordre du public. C'est vraiment très intéressant. C'est très intéressant parce que moi, j'aime dire que je crains quelqu'un qui sautait. Sauter ne veut pas dire qu'on ne pense pas à quelque chose. Tu peux être bon ou mauvais, faux ou vrai. Mais lorsqu'on parle, on parvient à se rendre compte que peut-être son opinion n'était pas vraie ou c'était vrai. La culture de la parole est très bonne. Je dirais peut-être que ce qu'on gagne dans la parole, on le perd dans l'écriture, mais aussi que ce qu'on gagne dans l'écriture, on le perd dans la parole. L'idéal serait de combiner les deux. Mais aussi, la fois passée, je thématisais le concept de la crise du discours, de la crise de la parole. Lorsqu'on regarde ce qui se passe dans l'actualité du monde, ça commence par ce qu'on appelle le formalisme, un discours, une parole creuse, sans contenu social. Je crois que je reviendrai à ce que disait Christian. La dimension politique de la parole est assez problématique. Donc, d'un côté, on risque un certain formalisme, un discours, un langage évidé du contenu. Mais ailleurs, dans certains peuples, peut-être des peuples qui ont trop de problèmes, nous avons des choses très difficiles à traduire, à dire. Des situations tellement problématiques telles que ça n'entre pas dans le système de la parole. En fait, il y a la dialectique, la complémentarité entre la parole et l'écriture se trouve dans la médiation du contenu. En fait, je le disais à Christian tout à l'heure, regardez la situation qui existe dans ce monde actuellement. Lorsqu'on compare avec, par exemple, le livre de Descartes, Discours de la méthode. C'est un livre qu'il a écrit, je ne sais pas quoi, pendant à peu près 4 ou 5 ans, en discutant avec les autres. Mais vous regardez actuellement, quelqu'un assiste à un événement et le lendemain, il a déjà publié un livre. Donc, un livre de 1000 pages, rédigé en quelques semaines autour d'un café. Vous l'achetez, et aussitôt acheté, aussitôt jeté parce qu'il n'y a presque rien. En fait, c'est ce que je pourrais appeler la crise du langage, la crise de la parole. Lorsque vous lisez quelques extraits d'Héraclite, de Socrate, de Platon, vous lisez 2 phrases par jour, c'est même trop. Mais les livres actuels, on peut facilement lire, je vois la plupart des étudiants, ils lisent en faisant ceci. Ils m'ont dit que c'est feuilleté. Donc, faire lire un livre comme ceci, en fait, c'est témoignage qu'il y a déjà ce qu'on pourrait appeler la crise du langage et la crise du discours. Et la médiation se trouve justement dans les deux, de trouver du contenu. Mais c'est vraiment intéressant de revenir à l'école socratique, de libéraliser le discours public comme nous le faisons maintenant. Mais je voudrais, avant de terminer, ajouter quelques indications sur la question que vous m'avez posée sur la philosophie occidentale. La philosophie occidentale, avec des concepts peut-être aussi souvent exagérés d'européisme. Bien. En fait, moi, mon opinion, c'est celui-ci. En fait, c'est juste une opinion. Je me dis que la philosophie est un champ très vaste. Il y a des philosophies terrifiantes. La philosophie politique, le prince de Nicolas Machiavel, tout près d'ici. C'est un livre terrifiant. Le livre de Nietzsche, c'est les livres de Hegel, La raison de l'histoire, sont des livres assez terrifiants. Mais moi, je me dis que lire la philosophie, c'est pas isolé, inversé. Nous sommes tout près des espaces de l'écriture de la Bible. Lorsque vous isolez un verset de la Bible, ce n'est plus toute la Bible. En fait, les livres de philosophie sont lisés en entier. Et parfois, lorsqu'on isole un contexte, un extrait de tout un concept, de tout un contexte, il y a peut-être des difficultés. Une autre chose que j'ai remarqué, c'est que la plupart des philosophes font plutôt des lectures du monde. Lorsque Machiavel écrivait Le Prince, on pourrait dire qu'il appelait les hommes à s'entretuer. Ou bien, est-ce qu'on ne peut pas aussi penser que plutôt, il a fait la lecture de la société là. Lorsque Nietzsche pense à des philosophies élitistes, des politiques qui divisent l'humanité en deux classes, la classe des élites et la classe des masses, est-ce que c'est une leçon qu'il donne ou c'est une lecture de la société de son époque? En fait, la plupart des écrits philosophiques sont assez denses, assez complexes, que chacun, j'ai trouvé que chacun peut y trouver son compte. En fait, c'est, comme je le dis souvent, Christian, c'est comme des œuvres d'art. Lorsqu'on a produit une œuvre d'art, je ne sais pas laquelle, je me dis que c'est pas bien de l'interpréter. Chacun viendra et va y trouver sa part. Une œuvre d'art assez bien faite, chacun va y trouver ce qu'il aimerait trouver. En fait, c'était un ajout que je voudrais peut-être apporter à la lecture de la philosophie occidentale. En fait, les avis sont très partagés. On peut dire qu'elle a été destructive, mais aussi on peut dire que je ne sais pas si je dois être avocat des philosophes, mais souvent je me dis que ce que nous lisons chez eux, c'est l'opinion que j'ai, ils faisaient des lectures du monde. Si un philosophe actuel faisait la lecture du monde actuel, je crois que les contemporains le trouveront aussi terrible. Merci. En fait, il y a aussi une question de la colonisation. En fait, la colonisation, le grand défi, le grand mal, je ne sais pas si c'est le grand mal, la colonisation, c'était un moment. C'était un moment, en fait. C'était un moment presque universel. Ce que peut-être les peuples n'ont pas pu faire, c'est d'aller contre ces moments, de se laisser déterminer par ces périodes. Mais le mal que je trouve que ça a causé, en fait, je suis souvent avec les étudiants, c'est cette mémoire. Souvent, je demande à un étudiant à peu près de 20 ans, je dis qu'est-ce qui se passe, il me dit j'ai été colonisé. Je dis par qui? C'est vraiment une question comme j'aime la poser à mes étudiants. Qu'est-ce qui se passe? Il me dit non, tu vois, Isaie, prof, nous avons été colonisés. Je dis tu as quel âge? 18 ans, 20 ans. Et toi, tu as été colonisé par qui? Non, on nous a colonisés. Je ne sais pas ce qui se passe. Donc, je prends tout un chapitre de leur dire qu'ils commencent leur vie. En fait, je le dis souvent que souvent nous avons des ennemis fantômes, des ennemis qui n'existent plus. Et c'est pourquoi j'insiste. En fait, mon dernier chapitre, c'était de permettre aux jeunes de se libérer par rapport à leur mémoire. C'est pas de créer d'autres problématiques, mais c'est vraiment une question assez réelle parmi nos jeunes étudiants. C'est une question qui reste dans la mémoire. Peut-être que les psychologues pourront aider à décoloniser ces mémoires, à guérir ces mémoires. Bien, merci.
But if you agree, we're gonna stop here the, let's say, the formal debate and discussion, and we can continue informally with a glass of wine or with a glass of water or whatever. Thank you so much to both of you to be here.
Yeah.
And I hope this dialogue can continue. Thank you.